We are checking out the new Samsung Galaxy A72. This device is, of course, the successor to last year's A71, which you guys might remember was one of my favorite phones of the year. So naturally, I'm super excited to finally have its successor, and I'm sure you guys are interested in it as well. We've got a fresh new design, some great new features and add-ons. There's a lot to talk about here, so I won't waste any more time. Let's just go ahead and unbox this thing and see what the new A72 is all about. Sliding off the lid of the box here, the first thing we get is the phone itself. Obviously, I got mine in this blue color. It's also available in black, white, and purple, and all those are colors we have seen on previous new 2021 A series phones already. Digging a little deeper inside the box, we do get a couple of accessories included. There's the standard USB-C charging cable and a 25-watt USB-C wall plug. Inside the lid of the box, there's one more small little packet of stuff worth going through. On the outside is where your little SIM ejector tool is fashioned, and inside here you'll find the usual stack of paperwork, instructions, and information, along with a clear rubber case to protect your new phone. It's nice to see Samsung still including this here with the A72. I'll show you what it looks like on the phone in just a second. First off, the A72 is once again the largest A series phone in the lineup. It's a 6.7-inch design, that's the screen size, and that's exactly the same size as we had last year. If you're curious, here's actually what the A72 looks like stacked up against the slightly smaller A52. The difference I think is super subtle, but the 6.5-inch A52 is just a little bit smaller there. Up front, not a whole lot has changed on this phone. You still have the same camera hole punch cutout across the top, which has shrunk in size just a little bit. There's fairly slim bezels along the sides with a slightly larger chin across the bottom. Now, with that being said, the screen to body ratio on this new phone did decrease ever so slightly. The black borders are a little thicker this year. The frame and housing of the phone also stick out a bit more too. Fortunately, I don't think it's that noticeable. The device itself as a whole is also just thicker, heavier, and more substantial in the hand. It feels really solid. The boxy sides are what I like. There's no curves or tapers anymore. It's a beefier device, but like I said, I do think I like that. The polished metal frame, of course, also gives the phone a more premium vibe, and around back, we see that we have that familiar matte plastic rear housing that seems to come on most Samsung phones nowadays. It's comparable to the S21, though it lacks that sort of metal-like finish. It's a little duller in comparison, but it's totally fine. It's exactly what we've come to know now, and compared to the glossy rainbow finish of last year, I kind of like this more simple matte look. A couple other physical things I do just want to mention. This new A72 is now IP67 water and dust resistant, so it should be able to handle an accidental splash just fine. And this is not something we've had on any A series devices before. And if you're curious about that included case, well, here it is once again. It's just a super simple, crystal clear, very flexible, rubbery plastic case. Again, something we've seen before, but a nice little addition nonetheless. It's slim, it protects every corner and edge of the device, and it's just great to throw on there just in case. Taking a closer look at everything else, on the left side, there's nothing at all on the phone. On the right is where you'll find the usual power and volume buttons. Up top is a SIM and SD card tray. This version of the device, like I said, has the dual SIM or SIM and SD card combo setup. Down below, the headphone jack has stuck around. There's the USB-C port in the middle, and the downward facing speaker there off to the right. And in addition to this speaker, the earpiece now is also a speaker too, for a dual stereo sound experience. This is something I asked for last year, and I'm really happy to see it added to this phone this year. The out loud listening experience on this A72 is just so good now. And here's a quick sample so you can get an idea. Around back, obviously we've got quite the camera setup to talk about, and I'll go over all that in just a second. As far as unlocking the device though, we do get that in-display fingerprint sensor again this year, and my initial impressions on this are that it feels pretty pretty good. It's not quite as fast as the S21, for example. You still have to keep your finger on it for a split second. It's a little more than just a tap, but it seems totally fine thus far, and I'm glad to see it's still offered. Face unlock is also an option, of course. That too feels pretty quick, at least out of the box. So either way you go, you should be getting into this phone pretty easily. Now, one of the biggest new features added not only to this new A72, but also the new A52 as well, is a high refresh rate display. We have the option to enable a 90 Hz mode for a fast, fluid, and just phenomenal user experience on this phone. And considering 90 Hz and even 120 Hz displays are seemingly becoming the norm now, even on more affordable devices like this, I'm really glad to have it here on this A72. I do think most everyday users are probably going to notice a difference between 60 Hz and 90 Hz, or high motion smoothness as Samsung calls it in settings. And I also think this is the kind of feature that allows this phone not only to continue to be competitive in the mid-range space, but also likely be one of the top options out there in its price range. And one interesting thing to note, while this A72 has a 90 Hz option, the A52 5G has a 120 Hz option. So sort of a little discrepancy in the lineup there, and might be something worth considering if you're really into a 120 Hz high refresh rate display. Now, the screen on this A72 on its own is also really solid. We once again have a Super AMOLED panel coming in at a resolution of 2400 by 1080, packing in around 394 pixels per inch. It's bold, it's bright, it looks good from every angle, and this I think is what Samsung does best on not only their flagship devices, but also and especially on their A series phones. The display on the A72 also seems to be an even brighter and more colorful setup than last year as well. With 800 nits of brightness, outdoor viewing shouldn't be an issue. And again, paired with that high refresh rate mode, you get a viewing experience that I believe is still one of the best out there for the money. It's a big display that shows your content well, it's bright, it's colorful, and I think it really is the perfect sort of setup for this phone. So last but not least, let's talk about all those cameras around back. Interestingly enough, while the setup looks to be the same as the A52, there's actually a bit more here to go over. The 64 megapixel main lens and 12 megapixel ultra wide both appear to be the same, but we now have an 8 megapixel telephoto lens for zoom and portrait capabilities, along with that 5 megapixel macro lens. Up front, the selfie camera also appears to be the same. It's a 32 megapixel shooter, and inside the camera app, it's actually a very familiar sort of set of features and shooting modes. We once again have that fun filters mode front and center for whatever reason, but beyond that, you can see up to 30 times zoom on this phone with a telephoto lens, which is great. It's definitely a solid add-on. All the rest of the usual Samsung shooting modes are there, including pro picture and video controls, super slow-mo, night mode. You can of course shoot in the 64 megapixel mode. You can capture video in 4K with both the rear lens and selfie camera. There's enhanced video stabilization and HDR, and all in all, it's a solid camera setup from start to finish. And I'm super excited to put it to the test over the next few days to see how capable it really is. It may still be a little behind the crazy flagship setups, but there's definitely a ton of potential here, and it could very well be one of the best and most capable and robust camera setups in its price range for this year. So there you go. Those are my initial thoughts and first impressions, at least, on this new Samsung Galaxy A72. But hopefully you guys did enjoy this video, and I'll see you guys later.